Okay, guys. She's still recording. We're going to talk about 5 pairs of reptiles that you can keep in the same room, not in the same cage, in the same room, easily. So, this isn't based off of the humidity specs. This is going to be pretty much based off of temperatures that both animals can thrive in. So, you're not as much making or having trouble like, say, you've got a leopard gecko in a room with a ball python, and the ball python shouldn't be really getting over 90 degrees, even though your leopard gecko sits steady at 80 degrees with a 100-degree hot spot. You know, it's going to be those residual heats, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, is what it's based off of. So we're going to go over those species because this was kind of something when I started keeping. I didn't go away from ball pythons for my first 5 snakes because I didn't know what I could keep similar in the room with them. And actually, I didn't even know you really could do that. I thought everything was going to be a little different enough that I was going to have to regulate each cage until I started using residual heat and heating pads and doing it cage to cage, but working with the whole room. It made my life a lot easier. So we're going to move on to number 1. Okay, so speaking of leopard geckos, the first one we're going to talk about is red-tailed boas and leopard geckos. They're all going to sit at a residual heat between 82 and 90 degrees. So, at least that's what it said online, even though that feels like it's high for a boa. Like, we used to keep the ones that I worked with between like 76 and 82, I think. So I guess 82 is pretty accurate, but 90 seems kind of high. Could be wrong, but that was kind of what the residual heat we kept them at, and they did fine. Actually, they're still living, if that tells you anything. One of them's almost 16, I think. So, if that tells you anything. But these are 2 animals that can live in the same room, and I also did this based off of cage size, what's going to take up room, and if it's going to balance out, with the exception of number 5. Number 5 is kind of a fun one. So, your red-tailed boas are going to require, and this is a me requirement, pretty much. Where did I write it down at? There. 8 by 2 by 1 is my requirement. And I write this stuff down because when I get to talking and I'm in front of the phone, I start screwing up, so I try to have something to refer to. But an 8 by 2 by 1 is like the minimal for a boa. And I honestly am learning that the stimulation these all species of snakes require, you're going to want something over a foot tall. 2 feet would probably be ideal for boas and things like that, depending on how big the snake gets. But mental stimulation is important, so being able to add obstacles in there for them is extremely important. But you're talking an 8 by 2 by 1 for the boa, so 8 long, 2 deep, 1 high. And then I just did a gallon for the leopard gecko, which is a 20-gallon enclosure. I think 20-gallon enclosures are like 1.5 feet, 2 foot long. And those are, for one leopard gecko, that's pretty good. They're going to have plenty of room to move and things in there. So with that, it's kind of offset to where you're going to take up a lot of room with your boa. But if you go PVC, you can actually stack them, and it's going to not take up as much room as if you had 2 boas, because you didn't know you could have a leopard gecko and use the same residual heat that you're going to use for the boa. You are alive today, dude. Are you going to bite me? You keep acting like you want to bite me. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and move on to the next section now. So this one I'm doing kind of based off of my collection. I wanted to go ahead and throw this in here. Florida king snakes. They believe me or don't believe me. don't really care. Zoom does great as far as residual heat and things of what I have set up for the ball pythons. We put him in that room the day we got him. We put him on forest floor, right? Forest floor the first day we had him, which holds a little bit of a humidity, but not a whole lot. Noticed his humidity was getting way high, more higher than what these guys ever need. So we put him on aspen. We went ahead and ordered some aspen and put him on aspen. And the aspen, mixed with what I keep the residual heat of our room, is perfect for this guy. He matches up perfectly as far as the coolant and stuff goes with the ball pythons. And I think he thrives. That's one thing that I do with my animals, is if they're just surviving, it's not good enough. They have to be thriving. If they are only surviving, then they aren't worth having in captivity. I think that's something everybody should take. If you do not feel like your snake is happy or your lizard is happy, or since we did a sugar glider video, if your sugar glider's not happy, you need to change something. They should be doing more than just surviving in captivity, because we bring them here to thrive. But with that being said, you're talking for the ball python cage, I set a 6x2x1. That is kind of like your internet minimal, except for they call for like a 4-foot cage online. I think you need a 6-foot cage. If your ball python's 5 feet, you need an extra foot for that snake to move. That way he can stretch out. That's my personal opinion. Baphomet is in a 4-foot cage and he's 4 foot long, so I kind of don't follow my own advice on that, and I'll be honest with you. But as long as if you have a 6-foot snake in a 6-foot enclosure and that snake can stretch out nose to tail, I think you're doing pretty good. We're going to upgrade Baphomet. That's what we got for now. I think everybody's coming up on upgrades here soon. So, like I said, take it what you will. You don't have to listen to me, but I focus more on how these guys are going to like life compared to if they were in the wild. So they do say that you need a smaller enclosure for ball pythons. I don't believe that's true, because the earth isn't smaller for those snakes. So king snakes, I say is 6x2x2. Along with what I was talking about on the last section, these guys, ball pythons, can require some climbing area. They say that they're not arboreal at all. I call BS. I give all my ball pythons now the option to climb, because I'm learning that they're kind of semi-arboreal. They eat baby birds in the wild. So if they're eating baby birds, how are they getting up in the nests? So I actually did an experiment with Baphomet by putting some sticks in there and seeing what he did. He started climbing, so we started adding sticks to all of the enclosures. I seriously think you need a 2 to 3 foot tall enclosure, with Florida king snakes especially, because they will do quite a bit of climbing, I've learned, but with ball pythons also. So ball pythons, minimal, 6 long, 2 deep, 1 wide, or 6 tall, don't you dare. 6, but we're gonna fight. He's in a mood. Okay, 6 long, 2 deep, 1 tall. That's minimal. I would really like to see a 2 to 3 foot tall enclosure for ball pythons and king snakes. King snakes, a minimal of a 2 foot tall enclosure, but 6 long and 2 wide would be alright. But like I said, a minimal of 2 tall, because these guys will do climbing. Quite a bit of it, actually, believe it or not. They're going to both thrive at about 75 to 80 degrees. Like I said, I've put him in the room, and what I use for residual heat for the ball pythons, he does fine in it. So go ahead and move on to number 3. Okay, this next one is crested geckos and California king snakes. Again, we don't base it off humidity. I'm basing it off of temperature. The cool side for a California king snake is 70 degrees. Your crested geckos will thrive in 70 degrees. We actually leave ours in our living room, because our living room and dining room stay about 70 degrees. So with Crested geckos, I actually just put cocoa fiber in the bottom of the enclosures, spray them, and the humidity kind of does exactly what it needs to do and gets to where it needs to be just by simply spraying the enclosure for their water. If you know anything about crested geckos, you don't actually have to put a water bowl in. You just spray down the plants and the glass around them, and they drink from there. So, what in the spider did you just do? So, they're kind of a good matchup too. You can keep those in the same room very easily. So I wrote down for the California king snake, they average around 4 feet. So 4 foot long enclosure by at least 2 foot deep. Again, 2 foot tall. California king snakes will do some climbing. If you can go taller, I would. But that's pretty much the same with everything. You always want to be bigger. You're going to kind of guarantee that your animal's thriving at that point. I think that our adult crested gecko is in 1 foot by 1 foot by probably 2 foot high. So you're talking maybe taller than that, maybe 3 foot high. I didn't write it down, but you definitely are going to want less outward space with your crusties and more high. They're going to do a lot of climbing. Actually, majority climbing. It's very rare you see them on the floor, except for Barry. Barry likes to get on the floor a lot. Don't know why. He does a lot of climbing still, but he also likes to get on the floor. But for your smaller crusties, you can go a little bit smaller with your enclosure. But these guys will match up perfect. Again, if you're doing a PVC enclosure with your California king snake, you pop your crusty gecko up on top of the California king snake's enclosure, and you're consolidating room and a very easy setup to go with. You can check on them both all at once. Go ahead and go to number 4. Okay, with number 4 is going to be bull snakes and corn snakes. So your bull snakes are going to sit around 70 degrees to 80 degrees on your low end. Your corn snakes are going to sit somewhere between 75 to 82 degrees on their cool end. With their hot spots, obviously, they're going to be higher. So for the temperature, setting your room to 75 degrees is almost a perfect temperature. I think for a bull snake, you're going to be kind of at that mid-range and just into the beginning range for the corn snake, but it will work out pretty well because you have fluctuation up for the bull snake, so they should do pretty decent. Your enclosure sizes is going to be 6 by 2 by 2 for the bull snake, and that's my numbers, is what I say. I didn't really pull anything off the internet except for number 5. I pulled off the numbers for their cages, what the internet says, and then what I think you should have for those animals. The corn snake, definitely looking at like a 6 by 2 by 2. So you're going to be running about the same size enclosures. Like I said, PVC, stack them up, and they'll actually really work out pretty decently together. Like I said, those temperatures match up almost perfect. So, and again, like I said, you should be controlling humidity between each cage. If you're putting multiple animals in one room, in my opinion, unless they're taking all the same humidity, which is really hard to find a bunch of species to do the same. So, make that one short and just move on to number 5. Alright guys, so number 5 is water monitors and reticulated pythons. If you've seen previous videos, you know I really want water monitor and a reticulated python. So these guys, 75 degrees on the cool end is about what both of them is going to require, obviously with the higher hot spots. Like I was saying, this is more for me. This is more actually for if you've got a warehouse that you're going to keep a couple species of animals in. So online, for a reticulated python, they say you need an 8 by 3 by 2 enclosure. So 8 foot long, 3 foot wide, 2 foot high. That is entirely too small for a reticulated python, especially if it's reaching 10 foot, which is what pretty much all of them reach at some point or another. I've heard that you can control how long they get by enclosure size and feeding. If you're doing that, you're not keeping properly, feed your snake until it's full. Well, shouldn't say that, but feed your snake the appropriate size meal and then let it wait it out. You shouldn't be skimping out on its nutrients and its food because you bought a snake that's going to get too big. And you shouldn't be skimping out on its enclosure and confining it to a box because you were an idiot that bought a 20-foot snake and don't have the room or the enclosure to suffice it. So, for me, a reticulated python requires a 10 by 8 by 8 enclosure, 10 foot long, 8 foot deep, 8 foot tall. I say that because you're pretty much going to have a room for it, and you want that snake to have plenty of room to move around. So they are, again, going to be somewhat arboreal, so you want them to have room to go up, and it's going to be easier for you in the long run as far as cleaning to be able to actually fully get in the enclosure. The water monitor. So online, they're saying a 6 by 6 by 6. Again, for me, insanely too small. A 10 by 6 by 8 would be a good start. 10 foot long, 6 foot wide, or 6 foot deep, 8 foot tall. I think that is a good start because water monitors in the wild move an insanely amount or insane distances in a day. I think what I read the other day was they can move up to like 20 miles or something like that in a day. So, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it's a lot for an animal that's just out hunting and things. They're extremely active, and they need that size of an enclosure to kind of get their energy out and their exercise in. If you don't have the room for them, don't buy them, guys. That's just kind of what I got to say on that. But these are two animals that you could keep pretty easily. It's if you're doing a big operation, I should say, or if you've got a zoo. You could keep pretty easily and maintain sufficient temperatures and not have too many problems as far as keeping them in the same room. Some people might say this is a pointless topic. So be it. Like I said, for me, when I got my ball pythons, it was easier for me to regulate the whole room and then do humidities individually and hot spots individually. So I didn't know what I was actually able to keep at that like 70 to 80 degrees that I had my room at. And then I started researching and found out there's actually quite a bit. But this was something I just wanted to do because, like I said, I had those questions. I was researching on ball pythons, but not other species, so I didn't know I could keep a Florida king snake in the same room as my ball pythons using residual heat. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and start ending the video now. Again, if you guys want me to start up a podcast, talked about it in the other two videos that was recently uploaded. If you want me to start a podcast focused on reptiles, let me know. I think I'm going to do it. I just want to kind of know what you guys are wanting to do. Same thing with the rehoming and stuff like that. We're working on that. If you guys have questions or need help with any reptiles, reach out to us and let us know. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. Instagram's probably your best option. Email, I think, is posted on YouTube. If not, we'll get a link up for that or put it in the description or whatever so you guys can email. I just thought about that the other day. Yeah, other than that, all the social media is in the description. So, rock on, guys. I guess I'll see you later.